to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Tonight we embark on a journey into the world of the cat who loves hot cocoa, immersing ourselves in the life and thoughts of a gentle cat and the ritual that warms his heart. You're invited to nestle beneath the covers, to let your mind quiet and your body relax. In this story, you'll meet a feline friend and feel the comfort of a warm drink, all while whisper soft snow falls beyond the window. As you breathe deeply and settle into stillness, imagine the scent of rich cocoa, the gentle flicker of firelight, and the soft purr of contentment. The story will unfold at a calming pace, beginning in your own point of view and gradually shifting outward. Allow each image and memory to wash over you. There is nothing you need to do but listen and drift. Miso was a small gray cat with wide, curious eyes and a velvety coat patterned like clouds. His home was a snug cottage tucked into the slope of a hill where winter draped the world in white and everything felt hushed. The cottage's owner, Anna, was a quiet woman who cherished simplicity and the gentle rhythm of their days together. They were a pair, each tending to the other in a way that only true companions know, and their favorite ritual revolved around a steaming mug of hot cocoa. On frosty mornings, Miso would awaken when darkness still lingered. He'd press his nose to the bedroom curtain, peeking into the pre-dawn stillness, then leap onto the bed to knead the quilt beside Anna. The slow, content purring that filled the room was like a lullaby to both of them. Anna would smile, stroke his fur, and whisper that it was time to make their favorite treat. In the kitchen, she stood by the stove, stirring a pot of milk and cocoa powder with a worn wooden spoon. Miso perched on a chair, watching the swirling liquid with eyes wide as moons. When a curl of steam rose carrying the scent of chocolate and vanilla, his whiskers twitched and he let out a quiet chirp. It was a sound that signaled anticipation and happiness, a gentle song that seemed to weave itself into the aroma of the drink. The first time Miso tasted cocoa had been almost by accident. On a snowy afternoon, as Anna dozed by the fire, Miso's nose had led him to the mug on the coffee table. He sniffed, mesmerized, and then dipped a cautious paw into the drink, licking a tiny drop from his fur. The flavor had been richer and more comforting than anything he had ever tasted. To his surprise, Anna awoke, laughter spilling from her like bird song. She told him that some cats might prefer fish or meat, but Miso was special. He had a sweet tooth and a love for the warmth of cocoa. From that moment on, their morning and evening rituals included a small saucer of diluted, safe cocoa, just for him. It became a shared secret between them, a bond sealed by the sweetness that touched their tongues and hearts. Outside the cottage, the world seemed quieted by the snow. Pine trees wore heavy white coats that glittered when the sun rose. Smoke rose from chimneys along the lane, twisting upward like ribbons into the cold air. Miso would often step outside after his morning cocoa, sinking his paws into the soft powder, and look out across the forest. Sometimes he could see other creatures moving slowly through the drifts, a fox with a tail like a plume, an owl perched on a branch, or deer pausing to nibble bark from saplings. They were neighbors he respected and occasionally greeted with a nod or a soft mew. There was a gentle etiquette among them, a shared acknowledgement that winter was a time of keeping close and savoring each moment of warmth. Mid-morning found Miso back indoors, curled into Anna's lap as she read an old book. The words on the page told stories of faraway places, mountains bathed in sunlight, ships sailing across seas of turquoise, cities where people crowded the streets, and music floated through the air. Miso's ears twitched, his breath slowed, and he began to imagine himself exploring those worlds. He could feel the gentle rise and fall of Anna's breathing, hear the soft crackle of burning wood, and smell the fading traces of cocoa. Often they would nap together, a pair entwined in a world of dreams. The chairs and rugs, the books and candles around them seemed to fade as they drifted into a cozy, timeless state. In the afternoon, Miso enjoyed wandering through the cottage garden. Snow blanketed the soil, but the shapes of last summer's herbs still stood like ghosts. Sage, rosemary, lavender. Miso rubbed his cheeks against the brittle stems, inhaling the faint scent of these plants, and remembering the way they had perfumed the air when the garden was in bloom. He paused by the patch where Anna would grow mint. In summer, she would snip mint sprigs to steep in cocoa, adding a crisp, cooling note. Miso remembered how the hint of mint on his tongue had made him feel like he was exploring a forest of evergreens. Often in the late afternoon, neighbors would stop by for a cup of cocoa and conversation. There was Mr. Clark, the carpenter from down the lane, who would bring along a new puzzle or story about an intricate chair he was carving. There was Yara, an artist who always seemed to have paint smudges on her sleeves and who spoke about colors as if they were living friends. Sometimes there were children, their eyes bright with curiosity and laughter that echoed off the cottage walls. They would sit on the rug in front of the fire, listening as Anna told tales. Miso would weave among the legs of the guests, his tail held high, receiving gentle pets and sometimes settling on someone's lap. When the cups were empty, when conversation had slowed to a contented hush, Miso would hop onto the table to lick the last dregs of cocoa from a saucer, the warmth lingering on his tongue. When the evening light softened the edges of the world, Miso would find a nook by the window to watch the changing sky. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting clouds in hues of rose and violet. Stars began to prick the darkening canvas. Sometimes a gentle snow would begin to fall again, whispering as it settled on the window panes. Anna would light candles, their flames flickering and casting shadows that danced across the walls. On nights when the wind howled, she would sing softly to Miso, lullabies her mother had taught her when she was a child. Miso knew the melodies by heart. He would close his eyes, his body loosening with each note, and dream of the cocoa they had shared and the moments yet to come. One chilly evening, after a day of deep snowfall, Anna and Miso prepared a special batch of cocoa. They added a pinch of cinnamon and a shaving of dark chocolate, stirring until everything melted into a velvety mixture. As they drank, Anna began to tell Miso about the history of cocoa. Her voice was slow, rhythmic, as if she were reading a bedtime story. She spoke of ancient forests far to the south, where cacao trees grew under the shade of taller giants. She described how people long ago discovered the beans inside cacao pods and learned to ferment, dry, and grind them. She told of ceremonies where cocoa was not just a drink, but a sacred offering, a gift to the gods. Miso listened, fascinated, his ears rotating toward the sound of her voice, as if to catch every word. Even though he might not have understood the specifics, he felt the reverence in her tone and the love with which she told the tale. As days turned into weeks, Miso's love for cocoa blossomed into a genuine curiosity about flavors. On some mornings, Anna would experiment. One day, she whisked in a spoonful of honey, creating a sweet floral aroma that enveloped the cottage. Another day, she added orange peel, zesting it finely so that bits of fragrant oil kissed the surface of the drink. Miso's whiskers would twitch wildly as he leaned closer. Once, Anna carefully melted a square of salted caramel into the pot, the blend of salt and sugar creating a flavor that seemed to dance on Miso's tongue. There were cocoa infused with cardamom, with chili, with an earthy mushroom powder that was said to promote rest. Each variation sparked a different mood, a new memory. Some made Miso feel as if he were walking through a citrus grove. Others reminded him of the warmth of a summer sun, even when frost covered the garden. Every season in the valley brought its own companion to the cocoa ritual. In spring, Miso and Anna would sit on the front porch, sipping warm cocoa as crocuses pushed through the melting snow. Birds returned, their songs weaving through the air like threads. Miso would watch them flit between branches, his tail flicking lazily. Summer found them enjoying their drink in the cool of the evening after long days, when the sun didn't seem to set. The cocoa in these months was lighter, sometimes blended with frothy milk and chilled, but the ritual remained. In autumn, as leaves blazed in orange and gold, they would nest indoors while winds whisked leaves down the lane. Cocoa in autumn was spiced with cinnamon and nutmeg, echoing the scent of the forest. Winter, of course, was when cocoa felt most essential. The deeper the snow piled outside, the more important it was to sit together and savor the warmth, to watch the firelight reflect in each other's eyes. Miso hadn't always lived in the cottage. Before Anna found him, he had been a stray kitten wandering the edges of the village. He remembered those early days, faintly now, like a dream. Back then, he had roamed alleyways and fields, uncertain of where his next meal would come from, or where he could curl up safely at night. One winter evening, thin and shivering, he had followed the smell of something sweet and warm. It led him to Anna's porch, where light spilled from the kitchen window and the scent of cocoa hung in the air. Anna saw him peering in, his small body silhouetted by snow. Without hesitation, she opened the door, set down a saucer filled with warm milk, and spoke gently to him. He had crept closer, drawn by her warmth. Anna's kindness that night began a story that would forever change his life. She let him in, wrapped him in a blanket, and gave him a new name to carry into his future. From that moment, he was no longer a wanderer. He was a beloved companion with a place by the fire. The memory of those early nights made every subsequent cup of cocoa taste even sweeter. For Miso, each sip was a reminder of being chosen and loved. When the wind howled outside and snow piled against the door, Miso would sometimes look up from his saucer and catch Anna looking back at him with a smile that said she remembered too. The connection between them deepened in the quiet spaces between sips, in the moments when words were unnecessary and the smell of chocolate filled the air. There were playful days too. On clear winter mornings, Miso would dash through drifts of powder, leaving trails of paw prints that zigzagged across the yard. He'd try to catch snowflakes on his whiskers, only to feel them melt away into drops that glistened on his fur. Sometimes he would pounce on his own shadow or chase the sparkle of sunlight, reflecting off icicles hanging from the roof. After playing, he'd burst through the door, shaking off clumps of snow and stirring up a flurry of laughter from Anna. She'd warm a small towel by the fire and dry his paws. Then they would share a cup of cocoa to thaw their bodies from the inside out. One afternoon in late winter, Anna invited the entire neighborhood to a cocoa tasting party. She set the table with different mugs, each filled with a unique blend. There was cocoa infused with lavender, cocoa with hints of almond, cocoa spiced with ginger. Friends arrived wearing knitted scarves and hats, their cheeks rosy from the cold. Children clustered around Miso, giggling as he sniffed each mug as though he were a connoisseur. They voted on their favorite flavors, wrote notes on scraps of paper, and laughed when their opinions differed. Miso, despite having a limited vocabulary, made his preferences clear by lingering over one saucer longer than the others. At the end of the evening, as twilight descended and everyone bundled up to leave, Anna sent each guest home with a small jar of her homemade cocoa mix. It was a night of community and warmth that lingered in Miso's memory, like the flavor of cocoa on his tongue. Not every cup of cocoa was the same, just as not every day felt the same. There were mornings when Anna woke with a heavy heart, weighed down by worries that drifted like clouds across her mind. On those days, she stirred the pot slowly, watching the swirl of milk and cocoa as if the motion itself was a meditation. Miso would hop onto the counter, rub against her shoulder, and purr as loudly as he could. There were evenings when the world outside seemed too big and wild, when Anna and Miso sat close together, finding shelter in the ritual they had built. Cocoa became more than a drink. It became a promise. No matter what turned outside their window, the shifting seasons, the movement of the stars, there would always be this moment of warmth and quiet to return to. It was a reminder that home is both a place and a feeling. As winter marched on, Miso's dreams grew more elaborate. After sipping cocoa, he would curl in front of the fire, eyelids heavy. In sleep, he found himself on fantastic adventures. He prowled along the banks of a river made of melted chocolate, each ripple glistening under a sun that never set. He leapt across marshmallows the size of stepping stones, feeling them bounce beneath his paws. He floated on a leaf down the lazy cocoa river, listening to the gentle splashing against the shore. There were hot cocoa waterfalls, hot cocoa rainbows, and distant mountains with peaks dusted in cocoa powder. In these dreams, he met other cats who loved cocoa just as much as he did, and they sat together on the banks, dipping their tails into the warm water and licking off the sweetness. Dreams were a world where everything he loved multiplied, a safe and endless playground. One particular dream left a deep impression. Miso found himself walking through an ancient forest, its trees taller than any he'd seen in his waking life. The bark was dark and textured, and the air smelled rich and earthy. As he walked, he noticed that the forest floor was littered with fallen pods that cracked open to reveal beans shimmering with golden light. A wise old jaguar appeared and told Miso that these were cacao pods, and that long ago, guardians like the jaguar had taught humans the secrets of turning beans into cocoa. The jaguar spoke slowly, explaining how each cup of cocoa carried within it the story of the tree, the soil, the sun, and the hands that tended it. Miso woke from the dream feeling humbled and grateful, as if he had been entrusted with a sacred knowledge, even if he couldn't articulate it aloud. It made each subsequent sip feel like a small ceremony, an honoring of countless lives that had touched the drink. As winter melted into early spring, Miso began to notice the days growing longer. The snow softened, its edges rounded by the warmer sun. But the ritual did not wane. If anything, it gained a new freshness. On the first day that crocuses bloomed by the cabin door, Anna and Miso brought their cocoa outside. The steam rising from their mugs mingled with the cool breeze. They listened to the drip of melting icicles and the chirping of robins returning from their travels. Even though the world around them was waking up, there remained a serenity to their quiet moment. Miso felt the continuity of their tradition like a thread woven through the seasons, holding their days together no matter how the scenery changed. There were days when the village children would come by with their sleds and ask if Miso could play. Anna, always conscious of his comfort, would smile and look to Miso to decide. Sometimes he joined them, running alongside their sleds, his paws kicking up sprays of powder. Other times, he preferred to watch from a distance, his tail flicking in contentment as he observed the joy when the children would finally tire and come inside for warmth. There would be cocoa waiting for them all. Anna kept extra mugs ready, and Miso sat near their feet, purring as the heat from the drink warmed their fingers and cheeks. They would talk about school lessons, snow fort battles, and the fantastical creatures they pretended to be. It reminded Miso of his own youthful curiosity. of the ways in which the taste of cocoa had opened his imagination. As the months went by, Miso and Anna developed an unspoken language around their cocoa ritual. There were small gestures, Anna's slight nod toward the stove, Miso's answering flick of his ear, that said everything without words. Some nights, they would light every candle they owned and let the light glow like stars around the room as they sipped. Other nights, they would leave the lamps dark and drink cocoa in the dim, letting their eyes adjust to the moonlight filtering through the window. They learned to time the cocoa just so, not too hot as to burn Miso's tongue, not too cool so that its warmth wouldn't sink deep. Each cup felt like an art form, an act of attention and presence. Miso loved the days when a gentle snowfall fell. He would plant himself on the window ledge, paws tucked neatly under his body, and watch as the world softened. Snowflakes danced in erratic patterns, sometimes swirling upward with a gust of wind before descending again. Anna would join him, her breath fogging the glass. They'd sit in comfortable silence, two beings appreciating the same view. When they eventually turned away to prepare their cocoa, the world outside continued its quiet transformation. But inside the cottage, time seemed to slow. The act of stirring, pouring, and sipping became a meditation. The warmth of the drink contrasted with the chill just beyond the door. It was a reminder that as the world constantly changed, there were anchor points of familiarity to hold on to. By late spring, the snow was gone, replaced by carpets of wildflowers. The days grew longer and warmer, and yet the cocoa ritual remained. It didn't matter to Miso that cocoa was typically considered a cold weather drink. To him, it was about the memories it held, the connection it symbolized. They adapted their ritual, sometimes using chilled cocoa, sometimes adding a scoop of whipped cream that melted like a cloud. They would sit under the blossoming apple tree, letting petals drift onto their mugs. The cats in the nearby meadow occasionally came to say hello, curious about the drink that smelled of chocolate even in the heat. Miso liked to think that he was sharing a secret, a hint of the magic that had shaped his world. One evening, as the first stars of summer winked awake, Anna looked at Miso and spoke softly. "My dear friend," she said, "do you know why I started drinking cocoa?" Miso blinked slowly, his tail curling around his paws. Anna smiled and continued. "When I was young, my grandmother would make cocoa for me. She told me that each sip was like a hug from the inside. She'd stir slowly, always clockwise, and hum a lullaby. On the nights when I felt alone or afraid, the cocoa reminded me I was loved. Now, whenever I share cocoa with you, I feel that same love. And when you lap at your saucer, I imagine that you feel it too." Miso rubbed his head against her hand, purring to show that he understood. It was a story within a story, another layer to the ritual that wove their lives together. As the story nears its close and the night grows deeper, you might find your own breath slowing, your eyelids heavy. Picture Miso and Anna sharing one last cup of cocoa for the evening. The house is quiet, save for the occasional crackle of a log in the stove. Beyond the window, the world is dark, but stars glitter like distant lanterns. Anna looks at the cat beside her and whispers, "A good night," and Miso curls into a circle on his favorite pillow, tucking his nose under his tail. His dreams are full of the scents and sounds and warmth that defined his days. The ritual will be there for them tomorrow and the day after and all the days they have together. As you listen to this, allow the rhythm of Anna's stirring and Miso's purring to lull you. Let the aroma of cocoa fill your imagination, bringing with it the sense of home and safety. There is nothing left for you to do tonight. Your world, like the cottage, is quiet and warm. You can drift into a peaceful sleep, knowing that whenever you need comfort, you can return to this story, to the gentle cat who loves hot cocoa, and to the warmth that seeps through every line. The world is hushed, your mind is calm, and as the last drops of cocoa are sipped, you too can let go and rest.